Welcome back to the Manolo podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with Miguel to talk about something that affects almost everyone. Whether it's you personally, a family member, or someone you know, medication versus meditation. On one hand, we've got the medical system, prescriptions, and science-backed drugs that treat everything from anxiety to high blood pressure. On the other hand, there's meditation, an ancient practice that has been shown to improve stress, focus, sleep, and even some aspects of physical health. So why does this matter? Because the choices we make about our health, whether to reach for a pill, sit down and breathe, or do a mix of both, can change how we feel, how we function, and even our long-term health. That's why today we're breaking it down. I'm going to share some key facts about medication, meditation, where they overlap, so you can see what the science actually says before we dive into our conversation. So some of the things that I put together and that I did a little bit of research before our discussion, one of them is that prescription use is actually more common than I thought. About 66% of American adults take at least one prescription drug, and about 1 in 4 take 3 or more. And that's from the CDC. Another fun fact is that meditation actually changes your brain. A Harvard study showed that just 8 weeks of mindfulness practice increased gray matter in the hippocampus. That's the part for learning and memory. And it also reduced parts of your brain that have stress and fear. So more of like a flight or flight sort of thing, or fight or flight. Another one was that stress is a major health risk. Long-term stress raises the chance of heart disease, diabetes, and depression. Meditation has shown to lower cortisol levels by up to 30% in regular practitioners. So some of the side effects versus the side benefits, medications like antidepressants can cause issues like weight gain and sleep changes. But meditation tends to bring positive extras like better sleep, better focus, even able to show they can lower your blood pressure. So both together, they can be, it was another one I was seeing is that together when they're used in tandem, it can actually have a synergistic effect or something that is even better than using them alone. So for conditions like anxiety and depression, studies showed that people often do better when combining meditation with medication than either using one by themselves. And that was from the JAMA Psychiatry Journal in 2014. So some of those were just facts that it's just data. And I was really surprised that so many Americans are using prescription drugs, but it makes a lot of sense. But I'll let Miguel talk a little bit about maybe what he learned and maybe just some things that he found interesting along his research.
Yeah, you definitely brought up some good points about the benefits of meditation, as well as using it in conjunction with typical medications to address disorders such as anxiety, depression, things of those nature. I will stress, though, that it is important before taking these things in your hands is to discuss with your provider, medical provider, what's right for you, because there is certain instances where you definitely do need medication. For example, in schizophrenic patients, it's been shown that the medication is like highly effective in those cases because of the chemical imbalance, as you mentioned. The other thing too is like medication can be, what's the word? It can have benefits more quickly than meditation. Things like meditation are often better in the long term. They can provide short-term benefits, but sometimes it's kind of hard to beat how instant the medication can be. However, it is important to know that medication is not effective for everyone. I believe it's, don't quote me, I don't have the exact number, but I believe it's something like 60% efficacy rate for SSRIs, which are the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And that's a commonly used class of drugs to treat things such as depression and anxiety.
So you're saying that the medication, the SSRIs, they didn't show like that much effectiveness?
60% is still pretty high. But I'm saying it's not 100%.
Right. Yeah.
That's like 2 and 3
60% is
people.
high, but it's not like high enough to be. It's like almost at 50%. You know, but
It is
it's
yeah.
high. It's not that high though, right?
Yeah. Well, I guess it is also important to note that besides, because I just spoke with my psychiatrist friend before this, there is like, I guess a preconceived notion that, therapists are kind of like these pill pushers, whatever. But the first line of defense for them is actually therapy-based solutions before they decide to go the medication route. So it really is, and that's why I said earlier, it's important to talk to your own provider, what works best with you, because it can be highly individualized.
So like most of the time they recommend doing it, like you said, it depends on the provider, but maybe like some providers might be really quick to give you a medication, and then others might say, well, therapy is actually let's try that first.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Kind of does it tend to be more that way where they'd recommend therapy first?
I believe so. That's usually the general case. Again, there are besides the benefits of medications, there are definitely some drawbacks. I don't know if you noted any of that, if you came across that during your research you want to talk about.
No, yeah. I mean, like weight gain, having issues sleeping. I know that a lot of people say that SSRIs, they actually cause them to feel kind of numb. That's something that I came across. It has a lot of negative side effects too.
Right. And it's interesting you said the sleeping part, because again, my psychiatrist friend was talking about how if they are having problems sleeping, then that's something that medication can help with. But if it's a side effect of the medication, then what do you just take more drugs for that to solve all the different problems?
Yeah, then you have like a compound effect. Like you need to take more for symptoms that you're having effects from one drug, and then you take another drug to help you sleep, right? And then it can kind of add up there.
Right. And which is why I think we're kind of having this discussion now is kind of want to show alternatives to just medication. I know maybe meditation isn't something a lot of people practice in their daily lives, but there are definitely a lot of benefits that scientific studies have shown too. So I just think that's something that we can all benefit from, like introducing like maybe 5 minutes of meditation in our daily lives. But there are definitely many different types of meditation.
I came across that too.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the big ones it shows is that I've seen it had the most studies, or is transcendental meditation.
I did briefly see that, but I don't have that in my notes here. Do you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, I think it was, if I remember right, it was more about like more sense of awareness.
Yeah, a lot of meditation is similar. I think when I looked it up, there's over 50 to 100 different types of meditation, that's definitely something I didn't know about before. I think the most common that everyone is kind of familiar with is the mindfulness meditation. That's where you just focus on breathing, and then whenever a thought appears, you just notice it. And the important part is to notice it without judgment. I think a lot of people get frustrated that they can't focus on their breathing. It's normal to have thoughts just pop in, but it's important to notice it without judgment and then just let it float away and then focus back on the breathing. So I think that's the most common form of meditation.
Yeah, and when I did look it up, they kind of centered around that. Essentially, you're just in the moment. You're not judging your thoughts. You're either focusing on one thing or trying to focus on nothing. And then everything else becomes kind of just you don't judge it. You kind of just sit there, take it in, feel it, and for a lot of people that have tried that, and even when I've tried it, especially in the beginning, it's really hard because you're trying to do something that your brain naturally doesn't do, because most people are just thinking, well, I got to do this, and then I got to do that, and then I got to walk the dog, and then I got to go grocery shopping. So it's like to take that step is actually challenging. You think that was, why do you think it feels hard initially when people start it?
Again, I think it's something that it's like learning how to ride a bike. You don't know how to do it immediately. It's something that it's a skill you develop with practice. And that's why I was going to suggest actually that one of the more easier forms of meditation is guided meditation. And that's just basically where you have a narrator or something, someone voicing you through different parts of the meditation, guiding you in the name. And so that's really good for beginners because you kind of just follow through. It's definitely still very helpful, but I think that one's a little bit easier for beginners if you want to build that habit of meditation. That's a really good place to start before maybe trying other more advanced types of meditation.
So you mean like having someone else guide you through it rather than just trying it on your own?
Exactly. And that way you're just listening to the voice instead of doing it yourself, basically.
Yeah, it makes sense because it's easier to focus on one thing than nothing. Sometimes nothing is a little challenging, right?
Exactly. Because with nothing, that's when you start focusing on everything.
Yeah, that does make it more challenging. But I think it's like you said, it is like a muscle. And I actually thought that was interesting too, because I started thinking it's almost like working out, because some of the things there is showing increased gray matter in the brain for learning and memory. So I thought about it like it's like working out for your brain, and you can increase that muscle, quote unquote, of your brain that is able to focus and to memorize things and learn.
Yeah, no, that's definitely a good analogy. I recall back when I was in college in one of my bioengineering classes, we went to a neuroscience lab and we were putting on the EEG caps. That way we can like analyze our brainwaves. And there was one student who put it on, and we were doing different things with the caps on. But one of them was simply just closing your eyes. And when this student did it, there was a immediate shift in a particular wavelength that I forgot which one. I think it's like the beta wave, but it was attributed to the meditation that he would practice daily versus all the other students. They didn't show that same change. So there are definitely differences in the brain structure that come along with meditation.
That's interesting. Wait, what was the machine that they had connected to him?
The EEG cap.
And for people that don't know, what does that measure?
So the EEG cap basically it just measures the different electromagnetic waves in your brain.
Huh. So the guy who meditated, he showed a different frequency coming from his brain, and he was able to tap into that better when he closed his eyes?
Yeah, it's not a different
Wow.
frequency. It was let me see.
I've heard of like beta waves and gamma wave, like I've heard of different waves that our brains can make in different I think of them as frequencies.
Here, let me just look it up real quick. So let me see if I can find it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So EEG beta waves typically decrease in amplitude and frequency compared to when eyes are open. This is because the beta waves are associated with active thinking, alertness, and sensory input, all of which are reduced when the eyes are closed and the visual cortex is less active. So what I was saying is that normal students who didn't practice a meditation, it took a lot longer for those beta waves to decrease versus the student who actually meditated. It was a lot easier to get into that zone.
Oh, so it was more like a light switch. Like he was able just to switch it.
Yes.
Like pretty quick.
Yes.
Huh. Wow, that actually kind of goes to the fact that it is kind of like a muscle. Like if you build it, you're probably able to get to that place easier, which is something that I did notice that when I do meditation every once in a while, but I noticed at the beginning it was much harder to get to that state. It took some time to actually get to a point where like, all right, I feel like I meditated. But more recently, I'm able to just, I'm not perfect at it yet, but I'm able to get to that place quicker.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I'm kind of in a similar situation where I've tried meditation before. I think I might have set my goals too high in trying to practice for 10 minutes a day. I think it's definitely easier to build a habit if you set your goals a little bit smaller, maybe 1 minute, maybe 5 minutes before. And you might not feel like you're accomplishing much, but over time, as we discussed, you're training that muscle. So it'll be easier in the long run.
Yeah, I think so. I'm like something that I came across too along research is that it can help people with ADHD as well. So that makes sense. If you're able to shut out things in your brain, you're able to focus and you're able to train that muscle to focus on things, to kind of shut out other things. And just the fact that you're able to use that part of your brain to help with your memory, learning, focus, I think that that's actually pretty cool. That your brain is actually changing. It's not something that is just happening. It's you're actually increasing the gray matter in your brain in that area, like making it bigger, like hypertrophy or something like that.
Right. And yeah, it's in one of the different types of meditation that I've was looking up. There's one called meta meditation, which is also known as loving kindness. And that's where you visualize sending love to yourself first, then to a friend, then a stranger, then someone you dislike, and then to the whole universe. So studies have shown that
That's
that
beautiful.
actually increases empathy and
Yeah.
also increase gray matter in that area of the brain associated with empathy.
Wow. So it's like if you can practice it, then it becomes better in your real life, and you can start using that in your day to day situations. It's kind of like when I used to play chess, or I still play chess, but not as much. But I would always think about it like, oh yeah, I'm playing this game. It's going to help me be more logical in real life. So maybe it's like meditation, kind of like that too, where this is going to help my learning. It's going to help my memory, my focus, and it's just going to make me overall a more productive person.
Right. And it's
But
very interesting.
no,
Um,
go ahead.
I think there's one of the other benefits I saw about meditation, which is kind of like counterintuitive. You think about living a healthy life that includes exercise and moving around, being active, but there's definitely a lot of benefit to just standing still, being still, and being in the moment. There's been studies that show that it does increase longevity and decrease all factor morbidity.
Especially in today's times when we have things like social media and like TV or in screens, and just we have so many things that can grab our attention and our mind and our thoughts, right?
Absolutely. There's a constant competition for our attention. And that's why I feel like, yeah, meditation now more than ever is very helpful, but also very difficult to achieve.
Just looking at it as a muscle just inspires me to almost work it out more. But I think in general, it's interesting how you can look at it as stronger, but for it to reduce the parts of your brain for stress and fear, it's kind of like this. I guess you could look at the similar on the other aspect of it, like because you're able to focus, you're able to lower your stress and lower your fear. So if you're reducing gray matter in those areas, you're not making them as strong. So it's like the opposite effect. Like if you don't work out that muscle, it starts to get smaller too. So you just stop working it out as much. You give it a break, and make it go smaller. So I thought that
You
was
know,
interesting. The other side
you
of
know
it.
what I just thought about too, about how, meditation is just kind of like basically being still and being aware, and it has a lot of different benefits. I was thinking about too how fasting, the long-term fasting, let's say, I believe it's more than 36 hours. Eventually you get to a state in your body where your cells actively repair like metabolic damage to your body, which I think is really interesting.
I think I've heard about that and how it can even reset your immune system. So it's kind of like the same theory. When you're doing less, you get more.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive, but there's definitely some science there.
No, definitely. Like, because when you're fasting, you're not eating. So you're not introducing the food into your body. And the metaphor towards your thoughts is that you're not taking in thoughts. You're literally just trying to focus on one or nothing. So maybe that's like a lesson too in all this, is that maybe less is more for sort of stuff like that.
Yeah.
But some of the things, like, I want to talk about medication aspect as well. So when you yourself hear medication versus meditation, what comes first to your mind? Is there anything specific that comes right into your mind when you think about that?
Personally, me, I try to stay away from medication for a lot of reasons, but I do understand that it is helpful for some people. I luckily have not had any like major depressive disorder or anxiety, so I can't speak to having to take medication for that. But yeah, I definitely think me personally, I feel like I would tend towards a more holistic and natural approach.
Yeah, it makes sense. And why do you think that you go towards more of that holistic approach?
I think I tend to go towards that because I rather address, like, if I, let's say I did have anxiety or depression, I try to address the root cause of that. So that could be like my living situation, relationships, and just general outlook. I feel like there's a lot of power in your mindset. And so that's what I've been kind of focusing my life in, basically, is making sure I have a mindset that is well adapted to a good life.
Okay, so in a way, if you have something that's in front of you, you don't automatically think, all right, well, I just need to fix the thing. I just need to understand what's going on deeper. What's the source of this? Where is this coming from? Why am I having this symptom?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I definitely have had dark times in my life where I was sad and felt kind of meaningless and stuff. And I think it's okay to be sad because like there are times when it's just unavoidable. You can't just be happy all the time. And again, it just comes back to your mindset and how resilient you are to those moments in your life.
Do you think that people jump to prescriptions maybe too fast instead of trying something like meditation first?
Um, I don't want to make any judgments about people because again, I feel like that's everyone's individualized. Like they're gonna have their own. I do believe that medication is like can help a lot. I think it really just depends on the person. Like if meditation isn't working for them, and again, it might not work for everyone, because it is that kind of muscle that you have to train, and not everyone goes to the gym.
The way what you said about every situation is different is, I think that hits the nail on the head. Because if you have a situation where you need this like short term and just need it to happen, like, and you're in a situation where you can't meditate as that easily, and like you needed the medicine tomorrow, you need to get to that place, or like something urgent, then yeah, it's going to get you there to where you need it, or it has a 60% chance of getting you there. But some part of me thinks that people would probably like, if we compare it to working out, they'd rather take a pill than actually go to the gym regularly. There is a part of it that is like, oh, well, this is really convenient, so I'm going to take the convenient route rather than the more challenging route too. But it's hard to know that because every situation is different, right? What people go through is going to be so specific to the individual. So it's hard to say like, oh, I think people jump to it too quick. But personally, for me, I feel like I'm more like you in that aspect. I like to just say, all right, what's the root cause? What's going on here? But I always wonder about that. Why is it that people are more prone to easier things? Which logically, I think people would rather do an easier thing. I mean, that just makes sense. I mean, that's why the whole purpose of technology is to make life easier, usually. So, but those are just some of my thoughts on it. I don't know if that helped.
Yeah, no, that it is like. I mean, I definitely want to talk about this because I feel like that's an interesting conversation to have. But I do feel like it is like kind of outside of the scope of the topic. but I'm more than willing to talk about it. Because
No,
yeah,
yeah, for sure.
like when you're talking about society as a whole, I'm not prepared because I didn't like look up any stats or anything. So this is just going off of what I see, my own perspective. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to like the gym thing, people trying to lose weight, maybe it is easier. Like everyone has their own situation, right? Maybe they didn't have early, let's see, they didn't have a role model early in childhood. They weren't
Hmm.
taught physical fitness properly and that kind of stuff. A lot of people who don't go to the gym are actually intimidated. Like the first time they go, they don't feel like they know what to do, how to be effective, how to build an effective workout plan for themselves. Versus like
Like
someone like you and
guidance.
I, we maybe we didn't know at first, but it is something that we knew the benefits of and like held personal values towards that. And we put in the efforts in order to teach ourselves to learn and not be afraid of making mistakes. Which again, there's a lot of, that's like a personal value in order
Kind
to
of
put
just
our,
to dive right into it, right?
what was that?
Like dive right into it and not be afraid.
Yeah,
Just give it a
exactly. Same with
shot. Like,
chess. I didn't know how to play chess. You didn't know how to play chess at some point, but we enjoyed it. I was a similar mindset that yeah, it's gonna help me make more logical decisions, help me with thinking, planning, and so I put in the work to kind of get good at it. But yeah,
but
it's a mindset thing.
no, I think it definitely it plays into the medication versus meditation because it comes down to that choice because we have that choice, right? Let's just say that you were diagnosed with something that you could potentially take medication for. Then you have a choice. Like, am I going to choose to meditate or can I choose to medicate? And then
Right.
that
Those aren't.
choice, then, but yeah, like what kind of what I was saying is that that's like kind of the source of why somebody would make a decision is because that's what I was trying to understand. Why is it that maybe you'd be more prone to meditation because that's becomes down to your individualistic choice to make the decision between medication and meditation.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, and then again, there's some situations where is it a nature nurture type of thing? Are some people just more? Are they just born more anxious than others? Is it like a chemical imbalance? Again, with the schizophrenia, that's definitely something like they almost don't have really a choice. The way I heard it described is like a chemical imbalance. So you kind of need the
Mm-hmm.
medication to help fix that chemical imbalance. And I don't think there's like any type of master level meditator out there that can physically like mentally just change their
Who
chemical
knows?
balance of their brain to not be
Yeah,
schizophrenic. It's like,
yeah. It seems unlikely, right?
yeah.
But it's an interesting point to why that is, and I like that you brought up guidance and just I think having someone in there that can inspire you to do something like that, like do the harder route or try something that sure it's not going to be easy, but there's a part of that journey too that I think that is also really rewarding when you put in that work because it's not really about the end result a lot of the times, but it's about how you feel while you're doing it. So when you work out, it feels good like while you do it. And I think that once you can make that connection that the process is what feels good rather than the what the result is, then maybe you might be more inclined to do the meditation or the workout or to build that
Right.
part because
Because I was
it,
gonna say, like
yeah.
when you said that it feels good while you're working out, I would say that's debatable for a lot of people listening right now.
Yeah,
Because I
that's
know a lot
true.
of
Yeah.
friends. Like I have a friend who is self-proclaimed hedonist, who I struggle to take to the gym all the time to motivate him because he's just actually, he's just happy the way he is. He knows he's like a little overweight, but
Mhm.
he just does not enjoy the effort and to like putting in the effort to maintain a certain baseline level of fitness. It's just too much work and
Yeah.
he doesn't feel like it's worth it. And so again, it comes down to the individual's values,
No, that's
what
a good
what
point.
they feel was worth it.
Yeah, it really just comes down to that. And I always like to think of people like kind of like plants, and sometimes that we can grow, and it's a little bit of nature versus nurture. So if you have a plant can grow to or whatever it can genetically, but if you put it in a seed in a closet and you don't give it any sunlight, it's not going to grow to its full potential. So the way I'm relating that is that you have different things in your life, in your environment, that can affect your genetics. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think it's genetics, and it's also what kind of environment you were brought up in. So if you had someone that was a really good example of someone who took extra effort into taking self-care or something like that, if you had that in your environment, it would be a lot easier to do the thing. So I think you're right. It's a little bit of mix of how you grew up and also a mix of your genetics too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Dang, this is kind of off topic because I know now we're going
No,
into
good.
like nature nurture. So, but I was looking, speaking of social media, but I saw a thing on, I believe it was Instagram or whatever, a video of this mother who was with her child, a little baby, like newborn, basically. She must have been a few months old because she was already vocalizing. But she had been teaching her child like basic phonics from an
Mhm.
early age before she was even one. As soon as she was able to like vocalize and like repeat after her, she would be like, A goes ah, B goes
Wow.
ba. And so, you just start them off like super young and then slowly build off of that because like again children are super, they're like sponges. They learn,
Yeah.
they crave enrichment. And so by the time this little girl was like a year and a half, she was, or no, sorry, I believe she was two and a half. And she was already reading simple sense like the cat sat on the hat. She was reading sentences. And I was just like amazed with that because I was like, it just shows that their children have a lot of potential. They just need that enrichment. And then you go into the, well, can all parents do that for their children? Like if you thought of if I don't know if like there's like a lot of people who just have kids and they don't think of the significant impact that they're making on the world. They
Mhm.
just, they almost have kids like their pets. They just bring them into this world and that's it. They don't
Mhm.
understand their actions, the impact that they have on the future outcome of these children. And it's shocking because like you wouldn't believe how many kids up to like, I want to say second or third grade, there's so many that don't know their names. I'm
No,
not even. That's like
that's
that
crazy.
sounds unbelievable, but I have a
Oh
girlfriend
man.
who works in the school district, and it's a
Yeah.
constant struggle. Like it's a definitely more than you feel comfortable thinking is possible.
Yeah. I think people have kids for a lot of different reasons. Some of them maybe because it's more about themselves, or maybe they just are not in a place that they can raise a kid, or maybe they're doing it for the opposite reason because they want to raise a kid really well. But I've always thought if I were to have kids, I kind of do the same sort of thing that they did with the phonics, but it would be like meditation. So start really young meditation. Maybe, I mean, I'm not like a child development psychologist or anything, but I'd try to like early as
I,
possible. I'd say.
Yeah, but yeah, going back to the psychology and the meditation, I think it's interesting because I have heard that in the schools, like as young as elementary age, they're starting to incorporate mindfulness exercises with the students and teaching them that. So I do believe that's good progress that we're making there, and maybe and curbing how many adults have anxiety, depression. But
No,
it's
definitely.
still very early, so we we still have to wait and see.
Yeah, I think they did. I saw that they did studies that it wasn't even like a study. It was like maybe a study for a school, but they did the first 15 minutes of school with meditation, and they ended the last 15 minutes of school with meditation, and they saw really good results for that. So I think that if you can start it early, imagine the gray matter will be so strong by the time they're like a full adult in that part of their brain. They'd be like a superhuman.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of crazy to think of what if we, if we had started meditating early as kids, how much different our lives would be.
But
Cool,
yeah,
cool.
some of the things I wanted to ask you too is when you did try meditation, what differences did you feel when you were doing it? Man, how did it affect you?
Hmm. I definitely felt, I definitely felt frustrated at first. I would say that because again, I think a lot of people have some preconceived notion of what meditation is and what it should feel like. And I just felt like I wasn't doing it right. So I kept getting frustrated and I felt like it was difficult for me. But then I learned more about what it actually is and then how to let how to let those thoughts enter and leave without judgment. And that was that change in mindset definitely helped a lot. And in how effective I felt meditation was for me in bringing that kind of like sense of calmness and awareness. Another one that I'd kind of practiced was I didn't practice. I didn't know that's what it was called, the meta meditation, the loving kindness. But I feel like that's
Mhm.
something I definitely like practice every once in a while. Like I'm Catholic, and so I think Jesus is pretty cool. But a big part of that is like loving your neighbors and but also your enemies too. So I feel like anytime I feel myself getting mad at the world and in the way things are going, I always feel like practicing that kind of meditation slash prayer has definitely helped a lot in just kind of spreading that empathy, that love.
So, do you think that meditation and prayer they have a lot of similarities in how it has its effect?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I believe that they're not one and the same, but yeah, they're very similar in how they affect the brain.
Yeah, because when you pray, you're focused on one thing, right? You kind of in the idea of I just imagine exactly
It
if I when I imagine someone praying, they're closing their eyes usually, right?
Yeah, you're kind of like in a state of awareness, but I would say it's probably more like focused awareness meditation versus open awareness. But yeah, there are definitely some similarities.
Yeah, I thought that too. When I was doing some research on that too, there are similarities. I think that you can focus on one thing. And when you said that, I forgot the type of meditation that you said, but it was the one where you had practice empathy and you think about other people too. I thought that was pretty cool because that kind of sounds like prayer another way as well, that you could do that same thing. So that to me, that had a lot of parallels with that type of meditation and prayer.
Yeah, absolutely. The meta meditation.
Meta meditation is what it's called.
Yeah, meditation is also known as loving kindness.
Hmm. What do you think is the optimal amount of days or time to meditate per week?
That's a good question. Again, I feel like it's probably going to come down to individual. There's been studies that show just like even 5 minutes of like breath work has significant benefits on the body. That's something we didn't talk about. This specific type of meditation that involves breathing,
Hmm.
that can like actually improve your lung function.
Like a breathing meditation, right? Just where you just focus on breath, like the
Well, I
Hoff
mean,
method
well,
or
that's
something like
mine
that.
because like mindfulness breathing, focuses on the inhale and exhaling. Let me pull it up. There's a type of breathing meditation where you focus on the cycles. So you inhale for, I don't know, let's say 10 seconds, and then you exhale for 20 or something like that, where
Okay.
is the timed cycle interval.
Like box
And
breathing.
then, yeah, exactly. Box breathing. That kind of breathing, that kind of exercise actually is good for your lungs. But just doing 5 minutes of that is like one of the, there's a study. Let me see. I have it here. It was done by, at Stanford. You can look it up. It's the brief
Mhm.
structured respiration practices enhance mood and reduce psychological arousal. But yeah, that's
Hmm.
in layman term. That's basically a way. Box breathing is a way to regulate your nervous system during moments of high stress, and it's like
Wow.
it's really quick.
So you're focusing just on breathing then, and because when you're doing that box breathing, you can't really focus on other things if you're counting how much you're breathing in, how long you're holding it for, how long you're exhaling. It's a really high sense of focus.
Right, right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
just
kind
simple
of
things like
yeah, and
that.
that's what differentiates that from mindfulness breathing, where it's that you're more focused on just the airflow going in and
Hmm.
out, and then also being aware that yeah, you might have some thoughts, but being aware of those thoughts and then just letting them go.
Hmm. Another question that I had for you is, and this kind of relates to that box breathing or just focusing on one thing like prayer, is doing meditative things like cleaning or working out a good alternative then? Is that like a good
Well,
alternative to meditation because you're focused on that one thing? Like, oh, this was meditative for me to go on a run, or
it's a
it's
good point.
meditative
That's
for
a
me to do
good
dishes.
interesting point you bring up, because there is, when I was doing some research for this, I did find a type of meditation called moving meditation. And so that can include things like walking, dancing, doing chores, stuff like that. I would say there is a difference between actively being meditative during those movements versus, just feeling like you're in a flow state while working out or going on a run, doing chores. Because I don't know if like that's something that you've experienced. Well, I'm sure with
Mhm.
running, but like with doing chores, sometimes you can enter like a flow state. But yeah, that's what moving meditation is actually very good at, is entering like a flow like state. So yeah, I would say it can have a similar effect sometimes.
Yeah, just focusing on one thing, like, and not doing something else. Because and I think about like something like doing the dishes, you can, or folding laundry, something that's mundane that you can just focus on, something that's not too complicated, and you just focus in on it, and it has a way to heal you. Or I know
Yeah,
my dad, he likes to go like cut the grass.
uh-huh. I think that's actually a good way, because like, I hate doing the dishes and I hate doing folding laundry. But I think if you incorporate some mindfulness in those daily activities, you can actually find enjoyment in them.
Yeah, it's got me thinking about like the other tasks too. Like a lot of people say that when they're in the shower, they have some of the biggest revelations and stuff. Like taking a shower, you're kind of forced in a way to focus on that activity. And you're just by yourself usually, and you're just kind of just thinking, it's one of those things that you can kind of get lost in it, you
Right.
know?
Like, yeah, taking a shower, brushing your teeth, all these little things that that we have to do on a daily basis that is considered maintenance, but they can have added benefit if you throw some mindfulness in them.
Something so simple too. And that could be like something really helpful that if someone if someone really wants to explore meditation, they could start with things like, I'm just going to be more aware. Look at when I wash my hands. Like, I'm just going to open the faucet, feel the water on my fingers. And a lot of spiritual teachers that I've listened to, they talk about awareness and really just living in the now, in the moment. Like Eckhart Tolle, he talks about that. And I think it's a really interesting perspective on meditation. And maybe it doesn't really necessarily have to be you just sitting there. It can be something just being more aware in some of the mundane tasks that we do every day.
Right, because like, I mean, I'm kind of guilty of this too sometimes. Like so many times, like if I know I'm gonna do something boring like dishwashing or whatever, I'll put my phone up and put a video or something. And
Hmm.
so yeah,
Yep.
I definitely think that's something like, you can force yourself to not do that and then try to be a little bit more, if you wanted to build a meditation habit. And that's one way to start, is by limiting how often you're relying on your screen, tablet, whatever, for that kind of the taking away of your attention.
Yeah, I think what's important is you're focusing on one thing, right? So
Exactly.
and so when you put away the phone or you put away the tablet, it forces you kind of to
It,
just take
it's
that
like
in. And
you're focusing on washing the dishes, but you're also I don't know if it's like you're focusing on one thing, but you're being more aware
mhm.
of everything.
It has actually a lot of parallels with meditation that we were talking about. So it's just like mindfulness, I guess you could call it. But another question that I had for you, If meditation was a pill, would it be more popular?
Meditation was a pill. How so? Like without all the benefits, with the very minimal.
Yeah, minimal side effects. Like you could just take it and all of a sudden you would feel in a meditative state
Mm.
automatically. Boom. You'd be like Zen.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think in this day and age in our current society, I feel like yeah, people would love to have a little pill that can give you that benefit. I don't see any, especially if it had no risk.
Yeah, that was just kind of like a thought experiment that I was thinking for myself. Like if it was really easy to do, then because it's kind of it relates to what we were talking about earlier, how sometimes taking medication is easy. But
Then what about like supplements? Because I don't know if you ever taken like ashwagandha, but like that's supposed to help
mhm,
with mental clarity, and I definitely had felt a certain level of focus and awareness when I used to take that regularly.
mhm.
So would that be how does that fit into the
Yeah, I mean
scenario?
that's a question, right? Between something that's like a drug or a medication versus a supplement. They have a lot of parallels, but I think yeah. I mean, ashwagandha is pretty popular, but maybe it's not even about the easiness then, because when you take ashwagandha, it can make you feel zenned out or calm, and but it's not as popular as maybe an anti-anxiety drug because, well, I think about when people have an issue and enough that they're going to bring it up likely to a therapist or a doctor, and or they might just look it up online and do their own research. But I think people a lot of times they'll trust what the doctor is telling them, or they'll think about that what the doctor is saying, and I think they'll just go for it because that's what the health practitioner is saying. So I should just do it. So I don't need to try any other alternative. There's a lot of guidance through what a doctor can tell you, and you'll do it.
Right. But yeah, no doctor is going to be recommending ashwagandha for psychological disorders.
Yeah, maybe like a DO, maybe, or but it's not the typical thing that you're gonna recommend. And I mean, I think the reality of this, a lot of this does have to do with the play on like the pharmaceutical companies, and there is money to be made with a pill rather than with meditation. Same thing with fasting too. Like there's a lot of diets and there's a lot of things that you can sell someone for weight loss, but going on a walk is free or meditation is free. It's you can't really make money off of it unless you like have a guided course or something like that. But it's not as profitable as let's say a drug would be to a pharmaceutical company. So that's another aspect of this that I think it's interesting to consider.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we live in a capitalistic society, so I think that it being profitable potentially can have an effect because there's a lot of off-label uses of drugs that are being prescribed, and there's things that I just question some of the intentions of like where is this coming from, like why is my doctor, I mean, I don't want to say that every doctor is that way, but maybe a doctor might be more prone to go with something that the sales rep recommended for them or something like that. So, I mean, I think there's an element of this of capitalism, of money that has to do with this too. It has to
Sure,
do
and
with,
that's not like a unreasonable thought to have because, like, I have a friend who's a lawyer. He works as workers' comp, and there's going to be some doctors who say, "Oh, you don't need surgery." They were kind of like more working on the insurance's side, and then that's why you sometimes need to get a second opinion and from another doctor who's like, "Well, no, this injury definitely would benefit from a surgery." So it's not absurd to think that, oh, maybe this doctor, had a visit from a pharmaceutical rep, sales rep, and they made a deal to sell some more drugs. So it is how the system works.
yeah. Yeah, I think what's important is that you can look at the big picture and just see all the things at play. So there's the convenience factor. There's doctors that could be influenced towards certain prescriptions. But I think that that's why it's important, like you said at the beginning, to go to a health practitioner that you trust, someone that you really feel like has your best interest in mind.
Yeah, that's the most important part.
Yeah. When do you think that medication is necessary? I know you brought up schizophrenia, but something that I thought that when I was doing my research, a doctor made a point that was very interesting. That he said that it's the timing about when someone takes the medication or if they need it at that moment that really matters. For instance, if they're in college and they're trying to really focus in this specific part of their life and they need that medication so they're not so depressive that they can't focus and study, and they're investing in their education, they're taking out loans. So this is like, all right, this is an important time when the medication is necessary now. We can't wait. You need this. And we can't play any games, to rely on you trying meditation. But I thought that was interesting that he pointed out that you take that in consideration. Like, is the timing when you take the medication important? And I was just wondering your thoughts on that. Did you agree with that, or do you think that every part of your life is important in timing?
Well, no, yeah, no, I mean, I definitely agree because, like, yeah, I feel like when you're a student, that's the example where you're at a critical point in your life where if you can't function without that medicate, like if that whatever disorder you're dealing with is so crippling, it puts that at your education is an investment. So if it puts that at risk, that's your future livelihood that's being at risk too. So yeah, I mean, that definitely makes a strong case to lean more towards the medication side, because again, we were talking about how quickly it can have effects and benefits. So yeah, I definitely agree that
Instant
thing to consider. Versus if they're a child and they're in third grade or something, I don't necessarily believe I mean, it depends on the case, but I feel like in that case, like that's something that could benefit more from therapy, meditation. I'm trying to build some long-term habits, because like failing the third grade isn't that big of a deal. It happens. Third grade is specifically a retention grade. And so yeah, I feel like when it comes to kids, there's a little bit more gray area whether it's absolutely critical or not to get them medicated.
timing, right? So you think that you would agree that timing does matter when you have to consider the medication side of thing?
Yeah, definitely.
I think the optimal thing to do in that case would to do the medication and the meditation. It doesn't have to be one or the other. So I think if you're at a point where that's a dire need, like we said, even 5 minutes a day can make a difference. Just small things, or even just focusing while you're working or while you're cleaning the dishes or taking a shower or washing your hands. Like little things like that in combination from when you need it actually does make a difference. And you probably get, I think that was one of the studies too, that when you combine the meditation and the medication, it actually has an even better effect. So it doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other. It can actually be both.
Yeah, I think that's the ideal solution, having something for the short term and then something for long term healthy habits.
Now, just one thing about that too is, what did you come across with? Because I know talking about this, we've talked mainly just on meditation and the medications. What exactly did you learn about therapy? I know you brought up like the cognitive behavior therapy, but is there anything that you learned about that?
Yeah, so again, I'm no expert. I wish we could have brought my friend on and you can talk a little bit more about therapy. But yeah, basically in how that works, the therapist just kind of help the client address the negative thoughts that pop up during like stressing situations, and kind of often address why their perspective are irrational or skewed, such as like, yeah, if I'm not perfect, like if the thought is like I'm not perfect, I'm a total failure, that kind of stuff. Like if someone's like trying to be a perfectionist for everything and it's causing anxiety. So that's like
So like reframing the way you look at it,
yes,
like how your
exactly.
thoughts and your how it affects your feelings and behaviors.
Yeah, and there's different reasonings. So yeah, it's all about like kind of like challenging and restructuring those thoughts. So that's why a therapist will, it helps having a trained therapist that can help guide you through those thoughts, and develop the behavior skills needed to help address those like anxiety and phobias.
Yeah, because that's a whole nother alternative too. You have the medication, medication, but you also have therapy. So there's a lot of options.
Yeah, and yeah, a lot of people I feel like are hesitant to try therapy in the beginning, but there's definitely a lot of benefits simply just talking to someone about your problems can have.
Yeah. And we are group species as humans, right? We're not like cats where we just can be by actually cats kind of are groups, but maybe we're not like a tiger, I would say. But I think
Oh,
that
we're a social species.
we're a social species. So talking about it, even if it's just with a friend, can actually help if you have negative thoughts or issues and you
Yeah,
feel like you're
and
spiraling.
okay. So okay, but going into I guess the society that we live in right now, like America, and how like individual, we kind of like an individualistic society. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, we're very much like pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Hard work overcomes all. Yeah, I was thinking, kind of how like there's a common thought like once you turn 18, it's time to move out of the house and live on your own, basically. And so I feel like there's definitely like all those that culture helps that individualism helps kind of I feel like adds to the problem of anxiety and depression because when you have those strong relationships with your family with your neighbors it adds a level of enjoyment to life where I feel like if you had that you wouldn't it would be less likely that you were affected by these had these different emotional disorders.
Hmm. That's one of the key
And
indicators of happiness is having a social support system.
exactly, yeah. And I feel like the way society is structured right now, it's to minimize those support structures. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't, really know my neighbors. Well, I kind of know my neighbors now that I moved in with my girlfriend. Not really, not to
Hmm.
like a great extent, but I definitely know them a little bit better. Just
Hmm.
because I go on walks with her and her dog around the neighborhood, and then you'll notice there's a lot of people who also have dogs and they walk around the same time. And so, you can get to know your neighbors that way. Say hi. There's one that, we got to know a little bit. But in the neighborhood I was living with before, I didn't really have that. I mean, I didn't have a dog, so I wasn't taking walks around the neighborhood. Maybe if I did, I would get to know them a little bit more. But yeah, I feel like there's just a lot of different things that we could be doing to kind of help building those relationships with our neighbors and know who we're living with and building that support structure. So one of them that I was looking into, I just read this book called The Service Berry, which I would highly recommend. But there's like it talks about the concepts of a gift economy, which I won't go into detail with now, but basically this book kind of inspired me. I already had thoughts about doing this, was like setting up a community area, like basically almost like donating my front yard as community space. There's a
Hmm.
tree there that I've been kind of wanting to chop down, but
Hmm.
building like a little free public library in the stump of that tree, and then
Hmm.
also just like converting the front yard into a garden where people could pick fruits and vegetables and share that with the community. Because one of the quotes in the book, it was talking about this hunter. I think it was like a tribe, I want to say in Brazil or something. And this hunter had a very big hunt. I guess he caught a lot of food,
Hmm.
and the I think it was like a psychologist, a sociologist, or something. Whoever was observing this man was asking him. He had more than enough, for himself and his family. And
Hmm.
so what he did was instead of storing that meat, kind of like smoking it and whatever to preserve it so that he can
Hmm.
have it for later, he basically just invited all of his neighbors and friends to his place to have a feast and share it with them. And the guy
Community
observing him,
based.
like, why didn't you like preserve it for yourself? And then he said, I preserve it in the bellies of my neighbor. I'm butchering the quote, but it was something along those lines. And that just kind of like, kind of reframed my perspective on like the social, like, because we don't really have that. I feel like it's very hard to build that unless you live in a very tight-knit community, which is very rare. But there's just so many little ways you could do that. Like for me, I've been getting into gardening, so I feel like that's one way. Like if it's a very small garden, I don't have enough to share, but
Mhm.
I do. One of my goals would be that I would love is to just get to the point where I'm growing out abundance. I'm sharing, getting other people into gardening in their own backyards and producing more than enough food, and then just start sharing that with the neighborhood. And that's
No,
part of
that's
the
a
gift
really great
economy.
way.
Yeah, and if I share, a mango tree, sadly, I've been raising, hopefully someone plants that in their yard, and eventually when it does give fruit, then they feel the need to reciprocate and share their bounty with the neighborhood too. And then I think the neighborhood is like a like a good starting place. I mean, obviously you start in the home with your family. But if you don't have that, then yeah, the neighborhood is like one of those things where you can try building that community.
No, definitely. And what you're saying about community and like bringing people together, I think that's something that definitely shouldn't get missed in this conversation because I feel like that kind of it's not exactly therapy, but it's pretty close to be able just to talk with someone about maybe not always the deep things, but maybe also the deep things too. So just being able to talk with someone, get feedback on your own thoughts, definitely what you're saying. Do you think that when you do those sorts of things for communities, do you think that it helps you feel like better about yourself or makes you just feel better in general as in your day-to-day emotions and overall a better sense of well-being?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, because like, yeah, you are doing something nice for the community, but I wouldn't say like it's absolutely altruistic. I don't know if there is anything that is like completely altruistic, like an altruistic act, because like everything that you put, like it's like an investment in the community, in some way or shape or form. You're gonna get a return on that investment, whether the neighbor helps you out or they they grow their own things, whatever. I feel like just build like you measure your value not with the wealth that you have, but with the relationships that you build.
Yeah, I think that's it's important that we brought that up. I think that there's actually so many options for us. It's not really just medication versus meditation, but it's I know that sounds catchy, but there's also things like that you can do, like therapy, or you can open your social circle or have better social support systems. Things like that can help if you're having anxiety, maybe depression. So I think that I'm glad that we covered that overall. Is
Yeah,
there
yeah,
anything
me
else
too.
that you think you wanted to?
Like, yeah, I just really wanted to get like, yeah, after reading, because like, again, I've been reading a lot of
Uh-huh.
books, and it's like one of the things that popped out
Yeah,
at
thanks for
me is
sharing
like,
that.
hey, yeah, if like more people, could think that way, then yeah, I definitely think that's one of the things that helps society as a whole, helps people individually with those dealing with those issues that affect them personally, But it's all just like an investment in the betterment of the society as a whole.
Yeah, and it makes you feel better.
Yeah,
It
for
makes
sure.
it makes you feel good, and it's when you do things for others. Really, I think that's part of our just the
Being a
basis
social
of our
species.
yeah exactly. Our genetics are shaped
Yeah,
that way.
yeah. There's I think the way the economy is like situated now, is what's the word? I was gonna say something about Adam Smith or John Adams or whatever his name was. How we kind of just like took his word with it. Everyone is compete. I think it's like something about with like how they're competing against each other for scarcity, but like more often than
Mhm.
not, it's been shown that people choose to cooperate with each other. But the way the economy is set up is more towards the other one way. So I feel like there's other like incentives that we could be kind of striving towards to help incentivize each
Yeah.
other. But again, that is kind of like off topic. So
No,
just
I mean, like I went to Korea about maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and I that's when I really saw the contrast between the United States and other countries. So like because I remember I was just going to the grocery store and I was walking back and then there was a person that was doing a they were doing like a workout in an open empty auditorium and there was like and they would like guiding like maybe 4 or 5 people and then like people were walking by with their groceries or from whatever they were doing, and they would just leave their bag in the front, and then they started joining in on the workout. And before you knew it, there was literally like 50 to 60 people and growing. It felt like a flash mob started or something. I was just sitting there watching the whole thing. I'm like, what is going on right now? And it felt like a utopia almost compared to the United States, because they were all doing it together. And it wasn't just that, but it was also the sense of community when it came to like cleaning. I didn't see any garbage on the road. It was very community, like thinking about someone else, and was as a part of like ingrained in their mind and doing
Right.
things together.
Yeah, and that's how it is in Japan too. Like that was like such a big culture shock, seeing how like united they are. And yeah, and it's kind of why just like traveling in general, you do like I feel like travel broadens the mental horizon. You can see how that there are different ways of living, in the world. And so it kind of like opens up your mind to the possibilities of what could be. And yeah, those are all nice, but like in the end of the day, I live here in America, and so I choose to. I mean, for the for the time being, to live here, and I want to, make the best of it. So I think
Definitely.
that's the important part.
Yeah, I think that if we can take the things that we learn from other countries, or maybe just from things that we can learn from other teachers. I mean, meditation's been around for a long time, right? So we can definitely learn from that. And is in knowing when to take a drug, or if we need it, what timing is right, some of the side effects that we could be getting. I mean, all that is important when considering whether to go down a route. And I'm glad that we just didn't talk about meditation or medication, but we also talked about things like therapy and social groups and dynamics and how that affects everything. So it's a really like a well-rounded way to understand the reasons why. And we also got into the part about why we choose medication versus meditation, or vice versa, and how our upbringing can affect that, and how our genetics can affect that. But yeah, I think this was a good discussion, Miguel.
Yeah, absolutely, Manny. Thanks for having me on. It was a good discussion.
Definitely. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a comment or a like, and just share with somebody who you think would find this interesting. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks again.